So the reason why most AI-generated landing pages look like this, where you have your inter font or Roboto font, you have this ugly purple to bluish gradient, you have those basic layouts, this gradient everywhere. The reason why it happens is because of something called distributional convergence. And I'm not that smart to understand it, so I went to Claude and I asked it to break it down for me. And what it essentially is basically picking the average. So if you think about it, if you don't provide any specific details to the landing page you want to generate, AI models will just default to the average from their training data. And in their training data, most likely, most common fonts are Inter and Roboto. Most common colors are like purple, gradient, and white backgrounds. Most commonly used layouts and so on. But knowing all those weaknesses of AI-generated AI Slop landing pages, where we actually know that most common fonts are like Inter and Roboto, those colors, those basic layouts, and we know the problem, and we know what makes a website AI Slop, we can actually steer the model towards not doing the thing that makes the website AI Slop in the first place. Let's actually go through the article that Anthropic team wrote about this exact problem, and I'm going to leave a link to this article in the description as well. The whole idea of this article is that you can steer the model towards not the average response by providing and pointing out those averages. So in this example, for example, with typography, you can specify to never use Inter Roboto on or other most common fonts, which will make, of course, the design more interesting. So if you look at the example where they have this default admin panel with, again, the very default layout, very default like colors. And here we're specifying typography, so it's going to change most likely just text. If you look at the new design, it still looks like shit. I'm not going to be like glazing here or anything, but it's much better than this. Like clearly this one is a winner just because we are steering it from those averages. And you can do this with almost anything. For example, like with themes, as they're specifying here for RPG theme. And you can go even broader and specify the weaknesses that, model has in design. So for example, with typography, as I said, you can specify that a model has to choose beautiful, unique, interesting fonts, avoid using generic fonts like Arial or Inter. And here in this prompt, we can actually see that we're specifying to avoid those AI-generated aesthetics, where we're specifying to not use overused fonts, to not use like cliched color schemes, particularly purple gradients and white backgrounds. And here actually as the first line, we're specifying you tend to converge towards generic on-distribution outputs. In front-end design, this creates what users call the AI slops aesthetic. So we're specifying to AI that it generates AI slop. And we're actually saying how to avoid this. Just by adding this to the prompt, just 400 tokens, and it will significantly improve the output. And I prepared 2 examples before and after as well that I generated in V0. So let's look at them. So here I have before we added those instructions to our prompt. So basically all this prompt says is create a landing page for MeetingPrep AI, a SaaS tool that automatically prepares users for meetings. And here's what it generated. Even though it's not that bad, but it's very generic. And I know that V0 probably has a lot of stuff on the background that also improves the UI of the output. But still, it's kind of boring. I don't like that it's in dark mode, and of course I can specify to make it light mode, but it's still very like Shatsiani in some way. Let's quickly go through this landing page. You have our hero section. Again, trusted labels, features as cards. Also, yeah, very like it loves cards. Then we have how it works section, which is basically a timeline or like a stepper view. And you can notice here that lines are not aligned. Then we have our testimonials, pricing, and call to action, which looks decent, but it feels average. Let's look at the result after it. Here's the result after. You'll notice that it's much more tasteful, at least in my opinion. I really enjoy this like color, those fonts. If we go down again, yeah, layout's still the same. This time it got the timeline, this line right. So yeah, layout is the same, but I don't know what about you, but I like this. I like this like color scheme. I like the fonts. Yeah, I don't know. This this one just looks more unique. It doesn't look like Chatien. It looks, and even though of course you can make it, you can make any Chatien not look like Chatien, but you know what I mean. I don't. This one just looks more branded. You know what I mean? And all we did is just added those 400 tokens to our prompt. So all I added was I pasted in this one, exact thing from the article, and I pasted the same prompt as I did for this one. And in my opinion, this looks much better. And here we're talking about only UI, but you can imagine that this problem and this solution goes much deeper than that. Because if in your domain you know those specific problems that AI makes, those mistakes that AI makes, you can specify those mistakes to AI and steer it into a different direction. And as you saw, it doesn't have to be fancy. It's just like 400 tokens. Just knowing the problem of your domain, you can specify those problems to AI and it will get much better. So everything comes down to expertise in your domain that you're trying to like solve with AI. Again, if you didn't know that purple gradient is bad and those interfonts are really boring, we wouldn't come up with those fixes and improvements to the prompt, right? So if you found this helpful, let me know in the comments and I'll see you in the next one.